Every day, you and I get bombarded with negative news. And just like our bodies becomes what we eat, our minds become the information that we consume. If you want to stay positive, it's so important that you also listen to stories that inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we interview world-leading experts dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. And if you stick around, I promise you will not only be as informed as if you watch the news, you will feel uplifted, inspired, and have more positive energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Hi and welcome. Today Great.com talks with Rania El-Gendi, who is the Program and Outreach Director of CAIR And if you haven't heard of them before, they are the Council on American-Islamic Relations. And that means that they are a Muslim civil rights non-profit. And if you're new here to this podcast, you definitely want to press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because today we're going to speak about how we can defend people that are being discriminated against. And we're going to talk about anything from the political climate in the US to understanding Islamophobia. So I'm so excited to speak with Rania today. Thank you, Rania, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
So how would you describe CAIR to someone that is not familiar with your organization?
Very much how you did. So CAIR is a national federation of independent chapters. We're a Muslim civil rights nonprofit. CAIR Florida is one of those independently run chapters. And what we do is pretty simple. I mean, we protect anyone who's being discriminated against. A lot of our clients are Muslims, but we also will have clients who don't belong to the Muslim faith. So we protect anyone who's being discriminated against. We advocate for the protection of civil rights here in the United States. And then we also do a lot of education work to empower, our community and also to build bridges of understanding and tolerance here in the United States.
That's beautiful. So what is the problem then you're dealing with? What kind of discrimination is happening?
Right. So, CAIR has existed for quite a number of years, for multiple decades. And, one of the things that we saw, unfortunately, in the US post 9/11 was the targeting of Muslim communities here in the US. Muslims only make up 1 to 2% of the population in the US. But unfortunately, they make up a large segment of people who are the victim of hate crimes and also who are targeted by discriminatory policies in the US. So we can talk more about that in a bit, but basically we see everything from Muslim students being targeted in schools, sometimes by their teachers, sometimes by other students. We see, discriminatory presentations or policies happening. And, we work to fight against that because here in the United States, we're really blessed with a country that's built on the freedom of religion, the freedom to express your faith and practice your faith. And so we need to make sure that we hold our institutions accountable to allowing people to feel, welcome and safe in practicing their faith, whatever it may be. And I'll also just say that, we do that in a variety of ways. So one good way to think of CAIR Florida's work is that there's two main aspects of our work. One is legal, where we can defend anyone. Let's say your employer discriminated against you because you needed a prayer break and then they fired you. So one is our legal department, which handles all of our civil rights claims and discrimination claims. But then my department is programs and outreach. And that's where we do all of our community work and all of our programmatic work. And so we do things like know your rights training so that individuals know what their rights are and they're empowered to advocate for themselves. And we also do bridge building through Islam 101 workshops. So we can, do a training for our local police department. We can do a training for our school board or for our school teachers so that they can understand the needs of their minority students, and then they can help create a more welcoming atmosphere. So we do a lot of proactive and reactive work. But I do want to speak a little more to the context, the climate that you mentioned, the Islamophobia climate, but I don't know if now is a good time or not.
I would love to speak more about the climate as well, but before, we're doing such a nice work laying a foundation here, and to be proactive, like you said, I was really curious to ask you, is there something that someone that is not so familiar with Islam or the practices of Islam, is there something you would like for them to understand when it's come to Islam or Islamophobia?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing about Islamophobia is just the misconception that people sometimes have about Muslims and the faith. And so that's why a lot of our work is based on education, because sometimes it's not in a malicious way. Sometimes we have Islamophobia that is malicious, that, is targeting Muslims, but sometimes we just have people who don't know better. And that happens a lot when it's, local institutions and they don't know the needs of Muslims. And so that's why we do Islam 101 workshops, to give a basic overview of the faith. And then it's a lot less scary to people because it's not as mysterious. And the biggest take-home message is really that, your Muslim neighbors are just like you, right? We are people who are going to the school that your kids are going to. We're shopping at the stores that you're shopping at. We have the jobs that you have, your doctors, your engineers, your teachers. So really, the Muslim community wants the same things that anyone else wants. And we just want to be able to do that and practice our faith, which, we love. Everyone practices the faith that they want to, right? That they love, that they believe in. And so that really shouldn't change how we live, the same that it wouldn't really change it for anyone else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like this proactive approach, and thank you for taking the time to explain this in our podcast. So let's switch back to the political climate then, because I assume you have been going through maybe even more challenges and adversities with the recent administration, and that now there has been a big shift. So yeah, if you could talk me through what challenges you've been going through there, and also what it means with the shift.
Yeah, absolutely. So like we said, there's sometimes, Muslims are targeted in a way that's based on the lack of education. And so for example, that could be your local school not knowing what the needs of their students are. And so we address that need. But there's a darker side to what's happening in the United States, unfortunately. Many minorities, not just the Muslim minority, being targeted in the United States and not having the same rights that others have. The first thing I should say actually is that there's a misconception of who are Muslims in America. Muslims in America are the most racially and ethnically diverse group, faith group in the United States. And there's research from the Institute of Policy and Social Understanding, and they show that we're one of the most, diverse faith groups. And so a large majority of Muslims in America are African-American Muslims, and the fastest growing subunit within Muslims in America are actually Hispanic American Muslims. So that just shows you that, the struggle that we see as Muslims and as other minorities, they're all interconnected. And this dark side of Islamophobia that we saw after 9/11 and really has just continued to grow and has definitely been incited by some political candidates, that have used this rhetoric of division and hate. There's an industry behind it. There is something called the Islamophobia industry. And I definitely, would welcome viewers to do more research on it. Where I'm located right now, which is Florida in the United States, is actually the hate crime capital of the United States. And so the Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled Florida as the hate crime capital of the United States. We have over 39 identified hate groups that are registered headquarters in Florida. There is over $400 billion over the course of just 3 years that has been gone into this industry of Islamophobia, of putting out messages, media, speakers who are blatantly racist, or discriminatory against Muslim Americans. And I'll give you some examples. In Florida, we did a study, and we studied, who was training local police officers. And in Tampa, we actually found out that one of the expert trainers that they were paying to come teach the officers was an Islamophobe, was someone who was well known as, spewing hate towards Muslims. And he was training police officers, telling them that the official policy that they should take would be to find ways to push Muslims out of their communities, find ways that you will make Muslims not want to live here anymore. So this is something that's, crazy. It's ludicrous. Like, how can you have, an official institution that's supposed to protect and serve the community, have a policy towards one group. And so what we did is we actually ended up working with the police departments to provide Islam 101 trainings to make sure that they would, protect all of their citizens and that they would have a better understanding of who Muslim Americans are. But there's obviously much, much more that we can speak about. I mean, sometimes you have schools that have presentations that are Islamophobic, and then their students are affected, obviously. You have the political climate is one in which there's a consequence to it. So you'll see that after this rhetoric is used in politics in the United States, there's an increase in hate crimes, and there's an increase in Muslim women who wear the hijab being targeted, right? And we see this over and over again. There are some political candidates, even here in Florida, who have built their campaigns on being Islamophobic. They've said, I'm a proud Islamophobe, and they've built their campaign on trying to get support from people, who don't want diversity, who don't want multiculturalism. So I think that's, what we're combating here. Is our goal at CAIR Florida is to make Florida safe and secure for all. We want to make it a safe and secure environment where we work to educate, to protect, and to advocate for all of our citizens. And that's what we're up against, really.
Yeah, that really paints a picture. And I understand. I don't understand. I can imagine the frustration and challenges of being a minority group and being misunderstood and having to fight for both your rights and to be understood. So I appreciate the work that you do very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So how do you think, so now obviously there's a new administration coming in. Do you think, what kind of effect can Muslims expect that to have?
Yeah. We're hopeful, right? And it's good to always be hopeful, even in Islam, because already I don't know if we can name candidates here that's kosher, but
that's okay.
Already with this new administration, the Muslim ban was repealed. So the Muslim ban was something that the previous administration passed that, discriminated against people coming into the country based on their faith. And so just that sign of repealing the Muslim ban on the first day of office for this administration shows that they're committed to tolerance, right? They're committed to the values that America is based on, and not committed to, creating division and discrimination. But there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, America is a very fragmented place, unfortunately, right now. And a lot of communities are feeling the pain. I mean, we have an epidemic of Black individuals dying at the hands of police. We have an epidemic of poverty and homelessness. We have an epidemic of, racial and economic disparities. And so there's so much work to do, and including for Muslim Americans as well. We're targeted often by the Department of Homeland Security. We have issues when we're traveling abroad, so all minorities in America, I think, feel the effect of policies that often, that often target them. And so there's much work to be done, but we're hopeful because at least there's an understanding that this administration will hopefully work towards that. Whereas in the previous administration, there was a blatant and disregard, for trying to build community and build bridges. And there was just, flagrant, unapologetic rhetoric used that really put our communities at risk. And so I think we're in a better place, and I think we're hopeful for the changes. And I should say that, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit. And so we don't work according to party lines. We only work according to values of, who's going to bring this country together, who's advocating for our communities to be united. And that's what we're working towards ultimately.
Yeah. I can imagine the relief with that shift in administration, but I can also understand that there is a serious feeling of commitment to the fact that there's a lot more work to be done. So what from your point of view would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years, both as an organization but also as a country?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we try to do at CAIR Florida, I mean, is more or less the same work that we always do, right? Which is that proactive piece we spoke about, to educate, to protect our individuals, to advocate on behalf of individuals. But in the long term, our 10-year goal, and it's funny because we just are releasing our 5-year strategic plan, which is going to work on 5 systems of change in Florida. So really transforming systems of operation in Florida, like the government system, the education system, the law enforcement system. And what our goal is in 10 years, not just to be doing trainings, and then I have to train the next police officer, then I have to train the next police officer, but to change policy, to change policy that's going to have a long-term impact. So, we create religious accommodation policies for prisons and for booking facilities. So I don't have to worry about intervening in one case of a Muslim woman having her hijab removed, but now the policy is changed. And so now every Muslim woman doesn't have to worry about that. With schools, we don't have to worry about doing one presentation to one classroom, but we kind of change the policy of the Department of Education so that all students will always have, that right to have their religious holiday off, or that right to pray in school or not be bullied for their faith. So our 10-year plan is to change policies in Florida that will indoctrinate some of the protections of these civil rights that we're working towards. And as far as our goals as a country, I don't know where to start, to be honest. I mean, like I said, there's all those disparities. And I think first we have to make sure that we never again get to a place where it's so bad that we have children in cages, or that we have to worry that the people who are protecting us might actually kill us. So I think first we have to get past that phase of that emergency crisis mode that we're currently in. I think there's a lot of reconciliation that our country has to do in terms of our history and really coming to terms with it, but also addressing it head on about, that our history is not necessarily what we always think it is, that there's a lot to our history that is the reason that we're seeing some of these disparities right now. And then beyond that, I honestly think that one of the ways that the US is different from some of the European countries is this economic disparity. And so it's so hard to want prosperity of social life and health life when we're struggling so hard and people are living paycheck to paycheck. And if they have a medical emergency, they're set far so back. But those are my personal takes. But I think that, we have to work on those structural issues, and then we'll get to a place, hopefully, where the majority of the country, and not just some parts of the society, but the majority of the country is living in a really successful and prosperous way.
Yeah, well said. So hopefully the solutions you're talking about will be scalable and can help assist in that transformation. And yeah, like so many of the issues you described, they tie into each other. Hopefully what we've seen in the last couple of years has been, exposing so many other problems. And now I hear many organizations I speak to be hopeful that, okay, it's tough, but we can start making positive change. So thank you so much. And we're coming towards the end, but I'm really curious to know, what can an individual do to take some kind of positive action to, inform themselves, stop Islamophobia? From your point of view, what is important?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the work that our organization does is not something that people can't do individually. So, you don't have to wait for us to set up a Islam 101 workshop. Go ahead and do some research, right? Find out about your Muslim neighbor. Go talk to them. Go have a sit down. I think that type of bridge building work makes such a big difference, and it goes such a long way. And in addition to that, same thing when we're advocating for policies, whether it's at the local level or at the state level, find out who your school board is, find out who your local officials are, find out what changes they're proposing, find out what's happening in your locale, and be active and be involved in kind of what decisions are being made, and then promote your friends and your family to make that same type of active engagement, commitment to active engagement. And I think if we all do that, on our micro worlds, then it's really going to have an impact, and it is going to transform the country. So feel free to utilize us as a resource, visit our website, cairflorida.org, but also whatever your locale is, these are issues that we can all be, promoting and fighting for. And ultimately, the better we treat people around us and the more of an example we are for others around us, I think it will have, a greater impact and a widespread effect.
Start becoming more active, take an interest in people around you, and be kinder to them.
Yes.
Beautiful. Rania, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with Great today. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Okay.
Thank you. And for you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that is showing the algorithms that this conversation is important, so more people can learn about how they can be a part of ending Islamophobia. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. What is Great.com? That is the most common question that we get. And the shortest answer I can give you is that we are a company that is moving money from the online casino industry and donates it to charities that is helping the environment. The long answer, unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you today. But if you're curious, definitely Google what is Great.com to learn more.